Good morning, everyone. Welcome you on this Thanksgiving Sunday. It is great to get together and worship and rejoice and give thanks to our God and to praise Him. Do you know that Thanksgiving is the second most popular holiday in America? Of all the things we celebrate and lift up, there's something about Thanksgiving. Of course, you can imagine Christmas is number one. But Thanksgiving is a close second, and there's something about it that we love, and we something special about this day that we celebrate this week. I mean, if you're thinking about it, it's got that Holy Trinity: family, food, and football. I mean, what more could you want? I mean, really, we all love to get together. Well, hopefully, most of us love to get together with our family. Most of us enjoy eating a great meal. And a few of us even enjoy a good football game. So I can see why this is such a popular holiday and why we've come to love this day. But I gotta say, I think that in much the same way that Christmas has lost its original meaning, its original significance in our culture, I'm amazed how many people who don't even believe in God celebrate Christmas, the birth of Jesus. And I think in a very similar way, Thanksgiving has greatly lost its original meaning, its original sense. Now it is a day of eating, and it's a day of family gathering, and it's a day of laying around and watching football and just stuffing ourselves and all that kind of stuff, which is great. I love all that stuff, but I do think we've lost some of its original significance. I think sometimes we forget where this holiday came from. I mean, it traces itself back to the Pilgrims who came to America seeking religious freedom, who arrived on the shores of America December of 1620 and immediately were thrust into a very harsh New England winter. And they were ill-prepared for what that winter would bring. And so over the course of that winter, half of the 102 who traveled together, died of starvation or disease. But those who survived, who made it through the winter, built relationships with the Native Americans that were there, and they began to farm, and they began to begin a new life there, and they started over in this place of religious freedom that they had found. And come fall and early winter, they realized how blessed they had been. How God had now allowed them, even after this terrible, harsh winter, to come through, and for some to survive, and for them to begin this new life. And so they set aside 3 days, actually. You think we celebrate Thanksgiving? They set aside 3 days to feast and to give thanks to God for His provision. And they had built relationships with the local Indians, including their king, Massasoit, if I pronounce that correctly. And they invited them, and they shared this great meal together. They sent some of their men out, and they went fowling. It says they went and shot birds that they could eat, and they shot some deer and hunted and what have you, and had this great feast. But it was all about giving thanks and praise to God, who had provided for them, who had cared for them, who had given them this new start. And you know, sometimes it seems like we've lost the thanks in Thanksgiving. Do you ever feel that way? You ever feel that way, that we've kind of lost the original meaning, if you will, that idea that it's a time of giving thanks and praise to God, being thankful for our blessings, being thankful for our... It feels sometimes like we have lost that thanks. And some would even argue that as a society, as a culture, we have become a less grateful people. That we have become a people in recent decades who just are less thankful, less observant, less likely to notice and give thanks for the blessing in our lives. But you know, I'm not sure that's such a new thing. I'm not sure that's something that's new to our culture or our season or our generation. I think, in fact, to a great extent, human beings tend to forget to be thankful. And I think often we fall into that of not remembering and not taking the time to give thanks and praise. I mean, look at our scripture reading for this morning. Here you have this story of these 10 lepers. Now, you understand what leprosy was, right? You understand that this was a terrible, painful, disfiguring disease. And it was a highly contagious disease. And so once you had leprosy in the early days, it was basically a death sentence at some point. It was slow and degenerate, but it would eat away at your flesh. And you were going to eventually die from it. And so those who got it not only knew the sickness and the pain and the agony of that disease, but they also immediately became social outcasts. And they would have to walk through the street, and as they traveled, they would have to shout out, "Unclean, unclean," so that people ahead of them would get out of the way so that they would not catch this leprosy, so that it would not be passed along to them. And so you have these people. And so in the story, you have these 10 lepers who, their only friends were the lepers, because they were the only people that they could associate with and be with. And so these 10 lepers are traveling along the road together, and they're calling out unclean, and they see Jesus off in the distance, and they know who he is, because they've heard from a distance who this man is, and they say to him, "Lord Jesus, have mercy on us. Heal us. Help us. Do something to alleviate this agony that we are living in." Because they had seen him heal others. They knew he was a miracle worker. They knew he could do something great in their life if he would. And so they're crying out to him. And so out of this social isolation and this disease and this sickness and this pain and agony, they cry out to Jesus for mercy. And Jesus simply says to them, "Go and show yourself to the priest." What's that about? Why the priest? What's the point of that? Well, you may know that in this culture, you were declared clean or unclean by the priest. And so they were on their way to be declared clean. And so what Jesus is saying is, I'm already healing you. Go to the priest and have yourself declared clean, able to re-enter society and life. And sure enough, on their way to the priest, their leprosy passed away from them. It just dissolved away. We don't even know if it fell off or it just disappeared. But nonetheless, the leprosy was gone from them by the time they got to the priest. And then they had the opportunity to be declared clean and to re-enter society. And this is a big deal. This is huge. This is life-changing for these men. These men have a death sentence, and they have this social isolation where they can't even be with their families, where they can no longer be with their friends except those who have leprosy. And so what Jesus has done for them is this huge, life-changing, amazing gift. Now imagine his surprise when out of those 10 whom he has healed, whose life he has transformed, only one, and that one a Samaritan, only one comes back to thank him. Now this wasn't some great distance. It didn't say they had to go to the priest and then come back and find Jesus. It wasn't like they had to go days and days of walk to come back and thank Jesus. It was across town. And so what would it have been to them to come back and to thank Jesus for this life-transforming, life-changing gift that he's given them? Now why do you suppose that happens? Why do you suppose those lepers, 9 out of 10 of them, failed to come back and thank Jesus? Why does it happen today? Why do any of us fail to be grateful, fail to be thankful for the great blessings in our lives? When someone else has done something wonderful for us, something that has blessed our lives, why are we ever not thankful, not openly expressive in our thanksgiving to them? Well, I think it varies. I think it depends on the person and the situation. But I do find that in some situations, there is an entitlement mentality. When someone is blessed, they somehow seem to feel like they deserved it. Like they somehow earned it, or why shouldn't they be? They don't need to go thank anyone because they earned this. They deserved it. And I wonder if some of the lepers thought to themselves, I've been sick a long time. It's about time God healed me. I've struggled with this a long time. It's been hard for me. I deserve to be healed. So I think sometimes we're not thankful because sometimes we feel entitled. We have this entitlement mentality. And I got to say, I think in our culture that is a growing issue. I think more and more we have an entitlement issue in culture. And so I think for some, they're not grateful because they feel as though they deserved it somehow, that they were entitled to this healing, to this gift, to this blessing, whatever it may be that we received. I think for some, the failure to thank someone else who has helped them, who has blessed them, is a pride issue. I think for some, it's humbling, quite honestly, to have to thank someone else. Because to thank someone else is to acknowledge that you needed help. Is to say, I didn't have it all together. I didn't have this whole thing under control. I needed help. And so to offer thanks to someone is to acknowledge that we have some areas of weakness. We have some areas where we don't have it all together. We have some areas where we're struggling in life. And so sometimes our pride keeps us from giving thanks. From ever going back and saying to another, thank you for what you have done for me. And to express that humbleness, to acknowledge that I didn't have it all together. And so I think that's a second reason. And a third reason, and I'm guessing maybe the reason these lepers most likely did not come to thank, is that sometimes we just forget. Sometimes we just get so caught up in life that we forget. I mean, for the lepers, I have to imagine that now they've been healed. They are just so excited that they can't wait to go and just tell the world. And they can't wait to go and be reunited with their family and friends and to share this good news and to resume life. And they don't have time to go give thanks. You know, and I probably didn't even intentionally think, I don't have time to go back to Jesus. They probably just got so caught up in the excitement of it and the thanks and the praise and yet didn't go back to thank the one who made it happen. And I think sometimes for us in life, we literally forget. We mean to, we intend to, but we just don't ever seem to get to it. I try to write thank you notes, but I gotta say, sometimes it takes me forever to get to them. It just seems like life is so busy that I just never seem to make the time. And sometimes I'll be really good and intentional, and like the next day I'll sit down and write a thank you note. Some other times it seems to be weeks, and sometimes I literally get so caught up in life that I forget. And I think sometimes we all go through that. I think sometimes we fail to be thankful because we just forget, because we get caught up in the busyness of life and never get around to it. And yet, Jesus seems to be fairly clear that he expects us to give thanks. He expects us to be a grateful people, a thankful people. He seems to be saying pretty clearly in this story that he is surprised that the others did not come back and give thanks for what God had done in their lives, for what he had done for them. And even though Jesus seems to expect it, I think if we're honest, there are times in our lives when we don't live it out. We understand that as Christians we're called to be a grateful people, we're called to be a thankful people, but sometimes we just don't really live that out. And so what I want us to kind of ask ourselves today is, what would change that? What would help me to be better at that? How could I get to that place of being more intentionally thankful? So I'll throw out a few ideas. First one is be observant. I think sometimes we don't give thanks because we don't even notice how we've been blessed. We don't even notice. And often this is in the incidental things. You know, there are probably a dozen times a day or more when someone will do some small thing for you that you could give thanks for, that you could express thanksgiving to them for. And I think sometimes we notice it, and sometimes we just don't. Sometimes we're just going along in our life and someone does something nice for us and we don't even notice. You know, like if if I'm at the post office, I'm at the post office a couple times a week. As I'm going in, I will look around the parking lot. And if there is someone on their way in and they've got their hands full, they're carrying a box sometimes, whatever, I'll make a point of waiting the extra 15 seconds until they get there, and I'll hold the door open for them. Simple little thing. Just try to express the love of God to them in some simple little way. How often does that happen to you? How often does it happen that someone holds a door for you, or just, does some small little thing that really didn't take but an extra 15 seconds out of that, but they blessed you in some way? Do we notice? Are we observant? And do we claim, do we seize those opportunities? What I want to say to us is, in the small things, excuse me, in the unexpected things, in the little things, do we notice? And are we stopping to take the opportunity to give thanks, to express thanksgiving to that person? So the first step, I think, if we want to be more thankful, more grateful people, we've got to be more observant. We've got to really keep our eyes open and notice the things that God is doing. And I read a book recently, and we're actually going to be doing a sermon series on this topic a little bit later in the year, but I read a book recently called 1,000 Gifts. And this woman went on this journey of noticing all the little ways that God was blessing her life, and would intentionally every day give thanks for many little things. And she started noticing things. Once she got in the habit, she started noticing things she never noticed before. Blessings, ways that God was gifting her. So the first thing is be observant. Secondly, be intentional. Be intentional. Go out of your way to give thanks. Look for those opportunities and do something with them. Seize those. Make a difference. I mean, how many of you grew up hearing this statement? Now, what do you say? What's the answer? You already know what I'm talking about, right? Now, what do you say? The answer, of course, is thank you. How many of us grew up teaching our children that? Saying to them, our parents probably did that for us, and we hopefully did that for our children. We were trying to teach our kids, and our parents were trying to teach us, to be intentionally thankful. They were making a point of saying, when someone blesses you, when someone gives you something, when someone helps you in some way, stop and say thank you. That was intentionality. And so I think we need to be intentionally thankful. In fact, I think we need to do things that facilitate us being intentionally thankful. I mentioned that sometimes I wasn't that great about getting thank you notes out. You know what helped me immensely in that? I started buying note cards and keeping them in my desk, so that when I remembered, when I thought of it, when I observed it, it was easier for me to be intentionally thankful, because the note card and the stamps were already in my desk. So I pull out a note card, write a quick note of thanks, seal it up, put it in the envelope, address it, and stamp it. It was all there. And so that's part of the intentionality. Part of the intentionality of being thankful is to be ready to be thankful, to do the kinds of things that will be thankful. And if you're the kind of person who knows that you will never send the note, you mean to, you want, you know you're never going to get around to it, then do something else intentionally. You got an email? Crank out a quick email. You got a text? Your phone, you can text on your phone, send a text. Do it. Do it now. Be intentional. Better to, I used to get caught up in this. I'd say, I want to send a handwritten note. But then I'd never get around to sending a handwritten note. And I realized that I probably would have been better to have sent the text that I can do right now while I'm thinking of it, than forget to send a note later. My good intention was that I'd send a handwritten note, and I thought how much better that would be than a text. But I'd rather have gotten the text out intentionally than never getting to the note that I meant to do. So be intentional. Take whatever steps you have to be intentional. So be observant. Notice the things around you. Be intentional. Take the steps to express thanks to others. And another thing I would say is make a habit of gratitude. Get in the habit of doing this. You know, like your parents saying, what do you say? They're trying to teach you a habit as well. And so what I've done now is I try to look for at least a certain number of people a week to be thankful to. I mean, it's more than observing what's going on around me. I literally look for ways that I can be thankful to others. At staff meeting on a Monday morning, we'll ask ourselves, is there someone that we could thank this week? Is there somebody who's done something? We just want to say to them, great job. Thanks for your extra effort in that. And send them a little note. We try to literally get in the habit of, I try to get in the habit of, so as you become observant and as you become intentional, you begin to build a habit of gratitude. It becomes ingrained in you so that you regularly are doing it. Is there one person a week, have a note card ready, one day a week, set aside time on your calendar and say, I'm going to send a thank you note to somebody who's blessed me in some way this week. Or maybe it's not notes. Maybe you say 3 times this week, I'm going to send a quick email to somebody who's blessed me. Or 4 or 5 times I'm going to text somebody. Just say thanks for whatever you did. Sang a solo at church this week. Hey, thanks for doing it. That sounded awesome. I was really, really blessed by that. So, observant, intentional, and make a habit of it. And then the final thing was to be genuine. Be real. Thanks only has meaning if it's sincere, if it's heartfelt, if it's, we don't want it to be overly exaggerated. We don't want to be disingenuous. People know that. They sense that when you're just being superficial with it or just being ridiculously over the top or whatever. Oh, that was just wonderful. Thank you so much. Oh, you picked up my pencil. It's not worth, a quick, thanks, is appropriate to the setting, to the moment. And so, being genuine and real in it. Just be honest and sincere when you give thanks. That people want to know that it's real. It has to be real. If they feel like you're being manipulative in some way or you're being disingenuous, it just doesn't have the same feeling. And so this is the habit I want to encourage. I want to see us get in that practice of observant, intentional, habitual, genuine gratitude to others. And I want to say this morning that I believe that all of that also applies to our relationship with God. We've been thinking, and I've really been talking about the ways that we might thank and appreciate people in our lives who have blessed us, and we do want to do that, and we need to do that. I don't think we're anywhere near as appreciative or as thankful to people as we ought to be. But I want to say today also that all of that applies to God. And so take that same paradigm, take that same framework and apply it to your relationship with God. Ask yourself, am I being observant of the ways that God is blessing me? Am I noticing those little things that God is doing in my life? Am I seeing that? And then am I being intentional in my prayer time? Am I taking the time not just to ask for more, but to thank God? I do a prayer journal. Some of you know that. In the mornings when I pray, I journal my prayers. Virtually without exception, the first part of my prayer time is thanks. Lord, I thank you for a new day. Thank you for the glory of the day you gave us. I thank you for what you did yesterday. I thank you for what's coming today. Whatever it may be, I find something. So then try to notice and intentionally thank God for how he's moving in my life, what he's doing, and the ways that he has blessed me. And then, not only intentional and observant, but then make a habit of it. Really get in the habit of continually thanking God. This woman I spoke to you about that wrote the book 1,000 Gifts, what she has become, she has developed this habit now of gratitude, and it has shaped her life, has changed her life. In fact, she's encouraging other people to do the same and just to have this attitude of, that's it, right? It's kind of a cliche now, isn't it? But have this attitude of gratitude. As much as that may sound cliche, there is some truth behind that silly little rhyme. There's something real behind that, is that it is important to have an attitude of gratitude, for that to be our countenance. I want us to get to the place where gratitude is our natural state, where we are just naturally thankful, naturally observant of the ways we are being blessed by others and by God. We are naturally intentional about reaching out, that it ought to be just something that comes to us automatically, to be grateful. I meet some people who are intentionally naturally grateful. And I meet some people who just aren't. And I think I figured it out. I think it's all about focus. I think it's all about what we look at, what we put our eyes upon. And I think the people who focus on what they don't have feel cheated and are not grateful. The people who focus on what they do have are thankful and grateful. And so I think that part of this is just being sure that our focus is right. Do we spend all of our time thinking about, I don't have as much as that person, or I don't have this, or, why don't I have that? Or do we stop and say, look what I have. Look at the way God's blessed me. And be thankful for it. I think our focus affects that attitude of gratitude. I think we can have an ongoing countenance and thankful heart if we have the right focus. If we're focusing on the things that God has given us and that others have blessed us with, and not trying to focus on what we don't have. Because there will always be someone who has more than you. That's always going to happen, because there's always somebody wealthier than we are. Somebody somehow better off, more blessed, apparently, by the standards of the world. Don't focus on that. Don't focus on others. Focus on your own life and what it is God's given you and how it is you have been blessed. So, this week is Thanksgiving. And in reality, Thanksgiving week, it's kind of easy to remember to be thankful. I mean, you're hearing that word all week long. Thanks, 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 Thanksgiving. And so it's relatively easy to remember this week to be thankful. But what I want to encourage us is to develop a lifestyle of gratitude. I want us to be thankful in an ongoing way. I want us to be thankful year-round. I want us to just get in that place where we've got this attitude of gratitude. And so I want to encourage you today to make a decision that you are going to develop a habit of gratitude, that you are going to become intentionally observant of the blessings in your life, and that you are going to be intentionally expressive in your thanksgiving to God and to others. Would you join me in prayer? Lord, I thank you that you have called us to have an attitude of gratitude. I thank you that you have asked us to just observe and notice the ways that you are working and others are blessing our lives, and that we would be intentional in taking the time to give thanks for those things, and we would literally build a habit of that. And when we do that, Lord, that it would be real, that it would be genuine. Help us, God, to be that kind of person. Help us, Lord, to be that grateful person who notices the blessings in our lives. I pray in Jesus' holy name. Amen.